One evolution every Marine must be prepared to undertake is the heliborne lift, from ship to shore or from landing zone to landing zone. It's especially important to know what to do should an emergency arise.
Looks like a number 2 firelight. We're going to come right and take a look at it.
Yes, sir. We got smoke coming out number 2 engine.
Roger. Go ahead and bring back number 2.
Yeah, roger that. ECL's coming back to stop. 13 units pull. Engine switch in. Fuel boost pump is on.
No, we're on our way down. I'm looking for the zone here. Okay, go ahead. Prepare him in the back for emergency landing. Let's get out the Mayday.
All right, roger. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
As part of the training for heliborne maneuvers, each Marine must also be trained in the procedures necessary to safely evacuate the helicopter in the unlikely event of an emergency landing, either over land or water. A safe egress from a crashed helicopter depends upon every Marine knowing what to do and how to do it. Their actions must be virtually instinctive, keying back to emergency procedures training. Training in helicopter emergency procedures is just as important as training in combat skills. Virtually all frequent flying Marines receive special instruction in boarding aircraft, stowing their gear, getting out safely and rapidly, and in the special procedures for surviving an emergency landing over land or water. If you have previously received this training, this videotape will serve as a refresher program. And for those who have not been through this specialized training, it will serve as an introduction to the procedures you must know to survive a helicopter mishap. In this presentation, you will see the proper procedures for boarding, en route, deplaning, emergency deplaning over land, and emergency deplaning over water. We'll begin by looking at boarding procedures. Proper boarding procedures start even before you step onto the loading ramp. Your heli team leader will form you up well clear of the landing zone and will check you off on the flight manifest. While you're forming up, remove all loose material, such as soft covers. Lower all radio antennas. Make sure your weapons are unloaded and that they are unsafe. During boarding, you will carry your weapon muzzle down. You wear your helmet at all times and make sure the chin strap is secured. Packs should be taken off your back and carried. When your heli team leader tells you to board, enter the helicopter single file and move to the front, alternating right and left. As you board, remain clear of rotor blades and be careful of slippery ramps. Keep your head up and watch out for the overhead hatch. The heli team leader is the last to board. He will remain standing until he makes sure all of his Marines are prepared for liftoff. Each Marine will fasten his seatbelt, making sure he is seated between the seatbelt anchor rings behind him. Never position yourself so that your back is centered on one of the seatbelt anchor rings. Your pack is never worn on your back inside the helicopter. There are 4 ways you can store it. It can be held on your lap or positioned between your legs. If there is an empty seat next to you, you can place your pack there and strap it in. Sometimes your unit may require all packs to be stacked aft and secured. Weapons should be positioned between your legs with the muzzle down. If your flight is over water, the aircrew will provide inflatable life vests for each passenger. To don the life vest, referred to as an LPP, first remove your helmet. Ensure that your 782 gear is unbuckled and that your flak jacket is open. Place the LPP pouch behind your back and buckle the body strap. Now rotate the pouch to the front of you and open the flap. Remove the vest and place it over your head. Put your helmet back on and tighten the chin strap. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with the location of the LPP's inflation cartridge toggle cord and the oral inflation tube. The LPP contains a whistle, a water-activated light, and a dye marker for use in survival situations. Passengers without helmets must wear a cranial, provided by the aircrew. If you're not wearing a cranial, you must insert earplugs due to the high noise level. When all of the Marines in the stick have completed their liftoff preparations, the Heli team leader will take his own seat and give a thumbs up to the crew chief. Because of your earplugs and the high ambient noise level, voice communication while airborne will be virtually impossible. So be alert for hand signals from the crew chief or your Heli team leader. As a passenger, you have certain responsibilities during the en route phase of your flight. Certain procedures should be obvious. For example, don't smoke, keep your seatbelt fastened, and stay awake and alert. Beyond these common sense procedures, there are critical responsibilities that only you can perform. First, locate your nearest exit or point of egress. In the event of an emergency landing, you will need to quickly evacuate the aircraft. You won't have time to start locating exits during the noise and confusion of an actual emergency. Let's take a look at the emergency exits in each Marine Corps helicopter. First, the CH-46. The largest and most readily available egress point is the loading ramp with its overhead hatch. Normally, the overhead hatch is open while en route, and even with the ramp up, serves as an exit. During an emergency landing, the loading ramp will be immediately lowered and will serve as an exit for those Marines seated in its vicinity. The main entrance door is located forward on the right side of the fuselage. Open the upper door first by turning the handle, raising the door, and latching it to the overhead. The lower door is opened by turning the handle and pushing the door out. A rule of thumb on the CH-46 is to turn all handles so that they point upwards. There are 2 window escape hatches on the right side of the cabin and 1 on the left. All window escape hatches are clearly marked with yellow tape and are equipped with HEELS, the Helicopter Emergency Egress Lighting System. That's this tubular installation that illuminates even underwater. Each of these window escape hatches has a pull tab located at the top of the window. By pulling this tab, you remove the window seal, allowing the window to be pushed out. Also on the left side of the fuselage is the emergency escape hatch. This too can be used for egress by pulling out the tape, removing the seal, and pushing out on the hatch. However, if guns are installed, this exit may be blocked. Now let's look at the CH-53. The CH-53 cargo ramp and overhead door are similar to the CH-46. Again, this is a primary egress point for those Marines seated aft. The personnel door opens in 2 sections. Open the upper section first by turning the handle, raising the door, and latching it to the overhead. Open the lower section by turning the handle and pulling inward. On the CH-53D, you would push out. There is an emergency escape hatch on the left side of the fuselage forward. It can be opened by turning the upper handle and pulling inwards. On both the CH-46 and CH-53, the cabin doors are marked to indicate the direction of handle rotation. On the CH-53, all of the windows are removable. Use the pull tab to remove the window seal, and then use the strap in the upper right corner of the window to pull the window inwards. The last helicopter we'll look at is the UH-1N Huey. This is a much smaller aircraft, accommodating fewer passengers. If you're riding in a Huey, you'll be seated between the 2 cabin doors. In the event of an emergency, you will exit through whichever cabin door is closer or unobstructed. Both doors slide aft, and both are equipped with windows that can be kicked out should the door itself become jammed. Now that you've seen the exits, let's go back inside the CH-46 and take a look at one more of your responsibilities while en route. It's not enough to identify an exit. You must also identify fixed reference points for guiding yourself to the exit. In the CH-46, there are litter support bars installed on either side. These make good handholds. In the CH-53, you could use the edge of your seat. The important thing is to locate these fixed reference points and mentally rehearse how you will guide yourself hand over hand to the exit you have selected. Remember, if your aircraft should go down, it could be dark, and you can count on a lot of stress, confusion, and noise. You could easily become disoriented. The fixed reference points you select beforehand will become your pathfinders, providing a sure route to your exit. You should also select an alternate exit. If your primary exit is obstructed, this will give you a backup egress route. Make sure you select reference points for this exit as well. Normal deplaning procedures are just the reverse of boarding procedures. Remain seated with seatbelts fastened until all motion has stopped and you get the hand signal from your Heli Team leader to begin deplaning. The Heli Team leader deplanes first. If you were wearing an LPP, make sure you return the vest to its pouch and leave it on the seat. As you exit, watch out for a slippery ramp and stay alert so you don't bang your head on the overhead hatch. Carry your pack and follow your Heli Team leader's instructions on where he wants you to form up. Be particularly cautious when exiting the UH-1 Huey. The Huey's blades can dip to within 5 feet of the ground, well within striking distance of your head. Always move forward once you have deplaned from the Huey. The tail rotor is at chest level. You must avoid this area at all times.
Mayday, 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 crossbow 07, engine fire number 2 going down LZ Canary.
If the aircraft should develop an in-flight emergency and a forced or crash landing is imminent, the crew chief will direct you to assume the crash position. Drop your upper body to your lap, placing your arms under and around your legs. This position takes the stress off your back and permits the body to properly absorb the force of a hard landing. It's critical that you remain buckled into your seat until the aircraft has landed and all violent motion has stopped. During daylight hours, with plenty of visibility and with the aircraft right side up, you can exit through the loading ramp as you would in normal deplaning. Unbuckle your seatbelt, abandon all equipment, and egress as quickly as possible. If visibility is poor or the aircraft is not right side up, grab your fixed reference point in the direction you want to go before releasing your seatbelt. Once you unbuckle, proceed towards your selected exit, always keeping at least one hand on your reference point. Don't let go until your other hand has grasped a new reference. To evacuate as quickly and orderly as possible, you can use the egress points such as the main entrance door, emergency escape hatch, or any removable windows. Be sure to drop all gear before trying to exit through a window so you don't get hung up. The situation itself, as well as orders from the crew chief or Heli Team leader, will dictate the most advisable routes. Remember, in any emergency landing, whether forced or actual crash, abandon all equipment, including your Alice pack, radios, and weapons. Once you have mustered with your Heli Team leader a safe distance from the aircraft, and if there is no danger of fire, your gear can be recovered. Ditching at sea poses unique problems. This is where your training and your mental preparedness for egressing can save your life. For successful water survival, it is absolutely critical that you have studied the aircraft, selected a rigid structure for a reference point to guide you out, and have selected a primary egress point as well as an alternate. In short, you know where you're going and you know how you're going to get there. Because of the special dangers involved in an emergency landing over water, thousands of frequent flying Marines are afforded training in the Naval Aviation Water Survival Training Units each year. Commonly called helo dunkers, these environmental trainers give the Marine the experience of making an actual underwater egress under the most realistic conditions possible. The trainees experience firsthand what it feels like to be plunged suddenly into an unfamiliar, disorienting environment, and under the watchful eyes of water safety instructors, learn to safely and quickly egress. Training in the helo dunker normally takes half a day. You begin by learning how to keep afloat in combat dress. Relatively simple swimming exercises determine each Marine's ability to keep afloat and get from one point to another. The multi-place helo dunker is designed to give the Marine trainee the approximate feel of an actual helicopter, complete with crew seats, reference point options, and egress routes. You strap yourself into your seat just as you would in the actual aircraft. One of the instructors, acting the role of crew chief, will signal you to assume the crash position, again, paralleling what would happen in an actual emergency. You must remain in the crash position until the dunker hits the water and all violent motion stops. Concentrate on keeping calm and avoiding panic. Take a deep breath just before your head goes underwater. Then, keeping yourself strapped in, reach for your reference point handhold with one hand and your seatbelt buckle with the other. With your hand firmly on the reference point, unstrap yourself and move hand over hand towards your exit. It is important to avoid swimming motions while in the dunker or actual aircraft. Kicking your legs as you would in normal swimming will probably strike the man behind you, knocking him from his reference handhold. Once clear of the dunker or aircraft, orient yourself so that you know which way is up and swim to the surface. In an actual aircraft, you would shed your 782 gear and flak jacket prior to egressing. Also, once you are completely clear of the aircraft, you would inflate your LPP. There is another precaution you must take in water survival if you ditch in a CH-53. In a ditching situation, the tail rotor will be within several feet of the water surface, or even lower if the aircraft is sinking. If at all possible, do not exit through the cargo ramp door if the tail rotor is operating. But if that's the only feasible egress point, make sure you swim to your left when facing aft. Let's review the main procedures you have seen, starting with boarding. When boarding, carry your packs and make sure all loose gear is stowed, radio antennas lowered, and weapons muzzle down. Center yourself between seatbelt anchor rings and strap in. Stow your pack according to local SOP. Don't forget your earplugs. During your en route phase, select both a primary and secondary egress point, and at the same time, check out fixed references you can use as handholds to guide you out. Learn the egress points in each of the aircraft you fly. Remember that in the CH-46, there are 3 window escape hatches, each marked with yellow tape and equipped with the easily recognizable emergency lighting tubing. In the CH-46, the windows push out once the seal is removed. The main entrance upper door is opened first, and if necessary, the lower door. In the CH-53, all windows can be used as escape hatches. These too are equipped with emergency lighting. After removing the seal, pull the window in. Open the upper section of the personnel door by turning the handle, pulling in, and latching the section to the overhead. To open the lower section, turn the handles and pull in, or on a CH-53D, push out. In any in-flight emergency, be alert for your heli-team leaders and crew chief's signals. Follow their lead. If you are required to assume the crash position, maintain that position until all violent motion has stopped. In the event of a forced or crash landing over land, leave all gear behind, including weapons. Proceed to the nearest exit using the handhold reference points you have selected and exit the helicopter. If the aircraft is right side up and visibility is good, you may not need the reference points. Just exit normally. In an emergency over water, there is perhaps a greater tendency to release your seatbelt when a crash is imminent. But it is critical for your survival to maintain your position until all violent motion has stopped. Take a deep breath before submerging. Then grab your reference point with one hand and unstrap yourself with the other. Move hand over hand, pulling your body along until you have completed your egress. Avoid swimming or kicking your legs, and do not inflate your LPP until you are completely clear of the helicopter. Once you are clear of the aircraft, orient yourself and swim to the surface. While the likelihood of you being involved in a helicopter mishap is small, mishaps have occurred. Stories from the survivors of such accidents have contributed much to what we know about the procedures for emergency egress. It is up to you to know these procedures, practice them, and be prepared to execute them in the event of an emergency. If a mishap occurs, Your actions must be almost instinctive. You'll have little time for planning. Your planning must be done now.